as far as, like, because it's a theme we're going to keep on coming back to, right? And it was what you and I talked about before we started recording, was that the virtual team is just like any other team.
Yeah.
But because it's virtual, because it's remote, the weaknesses are so much more exposed, and they're heightened, or they become exacerbated more quickly.
Yeah.
And so, that's why we've weighed in on this engagement thing, because in an office, maybe you can get by with the like you talked about before, the accidental kind of relationship building, kind of the you happen to bump into someone, have that conversation that really lights you up again. You bump into your boss. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen if everyone's remote. And so that's why we need to be so planned, and predicting what we require within the way that we manage the stuff, and the way we behave in these remote teams as well.
Yeah.
And so that kind of leads nicely into things like mindsets, and what mindsets need to be encouraged by the people in that team, the people leading that team. Just swiftly, what do you think that mindset looks like?
So I think that what is really critical at underpinning everything is, are you creating an environment for your team or your employees that is a psychologically safe environment? And what I mean when I say psychologically safe is, can people speak up if they feel like they have something to say without consequences? Can they make mistakes without consequences?
Take risks.
Take risks without consequences. Obviously, that's all within reason, right? But if you have an environment where people are punished for speaking out, people are going to stop speaking up, right? If you have an environment where people are punished for taking risks, you're going to see your innovation plummet.
Right. And so this is that thing, right? Like, we talk about engagement, and maybe those are our leading indicators, and engagement and mindsets and encouraging psychological safety is our leading indicators. But what are our lagging? That's where you're seeing high performance. That's when you're seeing innovation. You've created that environment that allows people to perform well. Yeah,
and I think that's part of the reason why, like just what we were talking about engagement before, is you're creating those really deliberate opportunities for people to connect. So specifically speaking about engagement, you have a team call where everybody talks through you have somebody talking the whole company through the results. You have then your manager talking the whole team through the team's results, and then you have the one-on-one time for that individual rapport. And that is, I think, that's really what underpins psychological safety a lot of the time, is rapport building, people feeling comfortable with each other, and people also having kind of the context that they need. And we're going to talk about tools a little bit later. But I think one thing to really keep in mind with when it comes to psychological safety is, do people have the same access to information? Does everybody in your team have the same access to information and context as each other? And if you, most businesses have probably done a pretty crappy job at documenting previous decisions or processes. And so if one person holds the knowledge and another, nobody else does, that may not necessarily be a psychological, that's an imbalance. So I think, when you're thinking about trying to create something where people can speak up without fear of repercussion, where they can take risks and make mistakes in the name of innovation without consequences. And then another underpin there is, does everybody have the same access to information? And does everybody have the same access to feedback and challenging projects? Because if we look at, kind of your typical inclusion measures, inclusion being, do people with different identities in your team, so that might be ethnicity, gender, sexuality, if we look at it through that lens, we see that generally minority groups have less access to information, feedback, and stretch projects. So by thinking, okay, if we see that knowledge sharing as a key component of creating a psychologically safe environment, then we're going to see that standard lift for everybody. A rising tide lifts all boats. I know that that's a cliche saying, but I really do believe that to be true.
And look, and interestingly, just we're in the time right now because of the events that are going on, both around things like equality and equity, and right now because we're in a position of strife with the recession and with COVID, where those two elements are just so highlighted, right? Because you need to create an environment that has all these different characteristics, so that people can respond to the current pressures right now, and innovate and do things differently and pivot or take those risks so that everyone can benefit, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Right now, it's just it's truly a time where those things need to be reinforced. Okay.
Absolutely. Cool. And if I can just plug Cultramp, I'm not sponsored, not sponsored by Cultramp, but if I can plug them again.
0800 number, just
yeah. One of the amazing features that they have is they have an inclusion survey. So they have a fantastic engagement survey. They also have a fantastic inclusion survey, which is a different tool altogether that enables you as an organization to measure, are different people with different identities having a similar experience at our organization, or is there a factor that we cannot control, that, gender, ethnicity, sexuality, that means that somebody is having a different experience in this company. And I challenge everybody who believes they have an inclusive and equitable environment to actually give those minority groups an anonymous way to express that feedback, and then act from there, because I think it becomes, at this point in this world, having an inclusive organization is table stakes.